Welcome to another episode of Nothing But That Sports Talk. I'm with Cruz on alongside Maria and Myraine. Welcome to the show for the first
How are
time.
you? Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yeah, very so much. I mean, I managed to connect with you during the WNBA Finals, and apparently you don't just cover sports; you also like cover music and entertainment. Publicist, you pretty much do it all. Like,
Yes, I
seriously.
wear many hats. It's like when someone asks me, "What do you do?" It's always like, "How do I keep this short?"
Why don't you tell everybody like how it all got started?
Geez, so this goes back all the way. I don't know if you recall, like 2010 was kind of like the beginning of like the blogging era. You remember that, right? Like
Yeah.
2010. And so I was a junior in college at the time. I went to St. John's. Shout out to St. John's in Queens. And me and my roommate at the time just saw like all these, me and my roommate are big hip hop heads. And then we saw all these blogs coming down. And we're like, why don't we just combine forces and make our own blog? And so that kind of like birthed everything for me around 2010. And that opened so many doors for me. I started writing for my college newspaper. I started writing for Hip Hop DX was my first paid gig. So that just opened a lot of doors on the music journalism side. And just writing overall for me, like I really kind of, I was always a creative writer. I did poetry and stuff, but kind of shifting over to like journalism and like news writing, that really just opened my eyes to that. In like networking with, music execs and managers and artists, I found that they had a need for like people to write press releases and email blasts and things like that, things that a publicist would do, which I didn't know what publicist was at that time. And so I started actually working with Ski Beast was the first producer, the first artist that actually let me work with him on the PR front. And so he kind of helped me get my foot in the door as far as like PR goes. Yeah, it's just been growing and I've been expanding ever since, really.
Wow, and wow, and obviously, you like you said, you wore so many different hats. I mean, you managed to take a chance at being involved with the music industry from a PR perspective and a journalist perspective, and well, even when you didn't really knew that it was going to kind of lead to this point, and you learned all those skills while attending St. John's University. Like, why don't you look back at the time when you was attending St. John's? Like, what are like the struggles of getting this whole thing started?
Since it was such a new like thing, navigating what can we do with this blog, like it was just like establishing that, and then as the years went on, realizing the politics of it all, especially in the music industry as labels started getting involved, and navigating all of that, and then just really trying to not just be another voice in the crowd, but stand out, making sure your content's being like read and heard and whatnot. So those have always been like the challenges, especially in the entertainment industry in general. There's just so many of us. So what can we do to separate ourselves?
Why don't you type a little bit, because you mentioned why you got into to transition from covering music to covering sports. Like, how did that all came about?
Initially, shout out to Ben from Urban Magazine. So I met Ben on when I was on the PR side of things, because I was actually reaching out to him and pitching my clients to be featured on his magazine. His magazine is Black owned. It really focuses on urban culture. I built that relationship with him as a publicist. I reached out to him. This was literally last summer, 2022, summer 2022. If I can take over the sports section and then infuse some of like the cultural elements into it, and of course still cover actual sports news, like I'd love to do that. And he's like, yeah, sure. He knows my work and whatnot as a writer and as a publicist, so I really appreciate him for giving the opportunity. And that summer that I started, I covered like a Brooklyn. I got an invite to cover a Brooklyn Nets their open practice.
Open practice and
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. That was like my first thing I covered as a sports editor. And then he connected me with the publicist at the WNBA, and then so I was able to cover the WNBA finals last summer, which was my first finals that I covered for them, and it just opened a lot of doors since then. And that year flew by. It's just been making sense, and then everything just kind of aligns, like, and so it's just like everything kind of just happens the way it does and unfolds the way it does, and it may have taken me longer than some other folks, but I've made the steps that I needed to take and learn the things I need to take, and I feel like I'm at where I'm supposed to be at now. So
Yeah,